In middle of the second mimer in last week's Dvar Malchus, and this is the third mimer of the Hemshech of Mamarim that we began the Dvar Malchus from 3 weeks ago, which is talking about Yaakov, the story with Makli of Artis HaYarden, the Igeres HaKodesh Simon Beis, Katointi Mikol Achsadim Mikol Emes. We said one of the major questions that remained in the air was about Kivim Makli. We'll talk about that soon. This mimer that we began already last week is speaking about the Divra Maskell began with different questions about Hanukkah candles, how it's different than Shabbos, and how it's different than the Beis HaMikdash, etc. Now, in Ois Beis, we're going to get back to the same topic about Katointi Mikol Achsadim Mikol Emes that we've been speaking about in the previous two Mamar. So again, we're holding on the bottom of page Chav Daled, Ois Beis, line 26. To be able to understand this, we need a preface. What was explained previously concerning, I have become humbled from all the kindnesses and all the truth that you did to your servant. And the Alter Rebbe explains, the one whose day of rejoicing, the redemption of the 90th of Kislev, the Geras HaKodesh Dibra Maskell Katointi, in the Geras HaKodesh titled Katointi, Shekasav Bekeshel Yutas Kislev, that he wrote in connection with Yutas Kislev when he got out of prison. The Alter Rebbe wrote this letter to all the Chassidim to ensure their appropriate actions and attitude after his liberation. So the Alter Rebbe explains, by the way, it's obviously reflecting, and as the Igeres HaKodesh itself concludes, the Alter Rebbe's own situation, that he was in a state of dire situation, and he was released, and therefore this release shows on the closeness of Hashem, and therefore we need to be humble, and more humble than even beforehand. He says in this top line over there on page Chav Hey, because Yaakov was very humble in his eyes, because of the many kindnesses, because with my staff I've crossed the Yarden, it says. Because Hashem's kindness expresses Hashem's closeness. The closer one is to Eibishter, one has to be even more humble. The more a person is before in the presence of Hashem, the more he is insignificant. More specifically, in the closeness of a person to Hashem, there are two aspects and components to this. All the kindnesses and all the truth that we asked initially in the first mimer. We mention this in passing in the second mimer, that seemingly truth is more basic, that the Hashem is trustworthy. That's less of a humbling, should be less of a humbling before Hashem than the kindnesses. So therefore, the Rebbe explains in the mimer, what does kindnesses refer to and what does truth referred to. When this Bayern was explained previously, all the kindnesses are referring to davening, but it's considered the will of the heart. And from all the truth is referring to Torah. The Chazal say the only truth is Torah. Specifically through Torah, becomes the drawing down of Hashem's essence. Therefore, Hashem's essence is a much greater closeness, and therefore brings us to much greater humility than the closeness that we attain through davening. And this Hamshachas ha'atzmus, the drawing down of Hashem's essence in Torah learning, had a practical impact in Yaakov Avinu's life. So he says in line 11, and through the Hamshachas ha'atzmus, drawing down Hashem's essence, that through that type of revelation, through that is affected, of what it says afterwards. That Yaakov Avinu saved me from the hands of my brother, from the hands of Esav. So that he might come and hit me and attack me. This means to say, even concerning Esav, the way he is in the ultimate descent, very much below. How low can Esav get? Until it could be that he will attack Yaakov Avinu, when Esav is ready and is willing and is able to attack Yaakov. In Shalosh Klipsat Meis itself, it is the lowest, most level. Also there does the Hamshachas Ha'atzmus of the Emes of Hashem of Torah affect that he is saved. Not only should not be that he will attack me, to such a degree does the Hamshachas Ha'atzmus affect that he completely transforms Esav. This is all affected because the higher something is, the lower it descends. Therefore, to be able to create a transformation in the lowest level in Shalosh Meis, that level that's ready to attack Yaakov, that is a result of the highest, most revelation. Especially when we're reaching Hashem's very essence. That's beyond the whole category and definition of place, Milo Mata, beyond above and below, beyond even the definitions and paradigm of what's on top and what's on bottom. So for sure, anything low and anything high doesn't stand in the way of Hashem. He could equally transform it. Therefore, through this revelation of Hashem's essence, which happens through Torah, the level of Emes, he refines the klippos, also when they are in the lowest level of klippos, like we said before, even klippos that's in a state that's ready to attack Yaakov. So the Rebbe goes on the second paragraph on Chafei, we could add and explain the continuation of the pasuk. After mentioning the general idea of with all the kindnesses and with all the truth, Moisef, he adds, that I crossed this Yarden with my staff. And we posed this question in the earlier Amarim, I never really answered it. Similarly, we need to understand why does he specifically, of all the kindnesses that Hashem did to Yaakov Avinu, why does he mention specifically this specific detail? Also, we need to understand top of page Chavav, that he is very exact to say with my staff. It's explained in Medrash. It says that this staff that Yaakov Avinu had, with which he crossed the Yarden, was also the future staff that Moshe Rabbeinu would use to smite the Egyptians, to make them makis, and to split the sea, etc., etc. And it was also it's also going to be the future staff of Mashiach. Why does he specifically emphasize my staff? In other words, the Torah is out to emphasize the unique connection of this staff with Yaakov, though the staff is shared by both Yaakov, Moshe, and Mashiach. Ois Gimel. V'yuvim behegdim amvor b'shalom. Bedrushay, Chanukah Perek Torah, Parshas Vayishlach, this will be understood by prefacing what's explained in the Shalom. In the section called the Drushim of Chanukah, under a chapter called Torah Oira, and also it's explained in Shalom and the Parshas Vayishlach, the following idea. You say some very interesting Rosh Tevison over here. It's a very geschmack verdlach. In Kiba Makli, concerning where it says Kiba Makli, that the letters of that phrase Kiba Makli is to Rosh Tevis Mi Kamoicha Bokelim Hashem Harvaya. That it's the Rosh Tevis of who amongst you is amongst the mighty ones, Havaya, or Ba'elim, depending on how Shezeu ha-Rosh Tevis shel ki b'ma. That is the Rosh Tevis of the letters, the first 4 letters of the phrase, Chof Yud Beis Mem. Mi kamoicha. In other words, you got to jump around. It's not in the order. B'kelim, and the Yud is for Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Then Rosh Tevis shel Kalihu, and the Rosh Tevis of the last 3 letters of the phrase, Kuf Lamed Yud, is Li Yeshuascha Kivisi Havaya. Again, it's out of order. Kuf Lamed Yud is the Lamed is on Shascha, Kuf is the Kuf, and the Yud Kei Vav Kei is the Yud. V'hu Shem Maccabee, and that's also the name of Maccabee. Ki Bama, Mikamoich Bakel Mashem, that's the name Maccabee. Sheshayach Gam Yehuda Maccabee, that's also connected with Yehuda Maccabee. Ugam Rosh Tevis, Baruch Kvoid Hashem Koimoi, that's also the Rosh Tevis Maccabee. And Mikamoich Bakel Mashem is also the Rosh Tevis of the pasuk Baruch Kvoid Hashem Koimoi. Again, it's out of order, but it's the same letters. In this pasuk of Mikamoicha Ba'elim Avaya, there's 2 explanations in the word Ba'elim. Like my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe brings in the Maimer, titled Mikamoicha of the year Tovrish Peiches, Sh'am Razal, Mikamoicha Ba'alamim. They say Elim is really, should be like Alamim. Alam means takifim, powerful ones. There's an expression in Gemara called the Alim Gvar. Whoever is the most mighty one, he overcomes. Abba Chonon Omer, Mika Moicha Chasen Yudke. Who, like you, is the one that shields Hashem? Who, like you, Hashem, is shielding? That's what it means. Mika Moicha Ba'elim. Ba'elim, he's translating as the word shielding. Who is the one that, like you, that shields? Which means Mika Moicha Chasin Misapek. He's saying over there, shielding means over here is an idea of controlling, holding back. In other words, when a person shields, it's like we say Shemesh Mogen Avaya Velakim, that there's Shei Belakim that holds back and shields us from the great revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei, of the sun has the shield that protects it. It means withholding. According to the first explanation, the word Ba'elim is from the expression power and might, Gever Alim. Like the Gemara uses the term, when you want to talk about a strong person, use the word Alim. That's the idea of strength and power and might in worldly matters. According to the second Pirish, the word Elim is from the word someone that is mute, that's silent, that doesn't speak. What does that indicate? Speech is the level of Hashem's revelation in this world. If we say that Hashem is mute, that's holding back the revelation. That godliness is concealed. There's 48 final combinations of the name Elokim. Then in the name Elokim, there's different ways of having the combinations of Hashem's name. But if you have all the letters, Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem, 5 letters, you're going to have more than 48 combinations. If you have lesser of those letters, then you're going to come up with the 48 different combinations that how they can be. And these combinations, as we know from Shar Yichud V'Amun, every single time you combine letters and change it around, these are limited forms of the Eibishter's revelation. So he says, actually, he also brings in the commentary on the side that when you separate the part, the Yud Kei from Elokim, then you have Alim. The word what we're saying about the strength, also the same letters like the word Elim. Anyway, so he says, The Rebbe asks, line 24, what's the connection between the two Rashi Tevis that's in the name Maccabee, which is Mika Moicha Ba'elim Avaya, that's one Rashi Tevis we said, and the second Rashi Tevis we said, the Baruch K'vod Avayim Koimei. That's one question the Rebbe asks. Also, we need to understand the connection between the name Maccabee, that concept of it is Chesed Kedisa, B'Shallah Shem Maccabee, B'Gematria Chesed. It's brought down the Shallah Kodesh, the Maccabee is the numerical equivalent of the word Chesed. With the Rashi Tevis of Mika Moicha Ba'elim. According to both explanations that we mentioned before in the word Ba'elim, whether it's Achayzeg V'Toikev Binyonei Olam, the strength and might in worldly matters, or Elim from the word Alim, from the word silent, Hahelam Delakus, the concealment of godliness, in Yonei Gvuris, it's the idea of might and limitation and constriction. If it's the idea of might and limitation and constriction, so how do you call it that Maccabee, how does it fit in? The Maccabee is Gematria Chesed, which shows on kindness. Ois Daled, line 1. To be able to understand all of this, first we have to explain the idea that we say Baruch V'Avayim Koimei Sheshayach LaAvodas HaIfanim V'Chayis HaKodesh. It's associated with the avodah of the malachim called Ifanim and those other malachim that are called the holy beasts. There are different levels of malachim. Who l'mayla me'avodas hasrafim sha'ombrim kadosh kadosh kadosh. The Rebbe says that this expression of Baruch K'vod Avayim Koimei is higher than the avodah of the srafim that say kadosh kadosh kadosh, even though srafim are really higher malachim than Chayis Nafane HaKodesh. Yet the phrase Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh is not as high as Baruch K'vod Avayim Koimei, as he's soon going to explain. Because the three times Kadosh correspond to the three worlds of Bri, Yitzir, Vasiyah, the spiritual world of Asiyah specifically. As we've mentioned in other times, our physical world is called the physical Asiyah. Then there's corresponding to that, the energy of the spiritual energy of our physical world is Olam Asiyah, Ruchnis, the spiritual world of Asiyah. As opposed to Baruch K'vod corresponds to that which is drawn down in the physical world of Asiyah, which is lower than the spiritual Asiyah. So how do we say that it's a higher avodah? If it's coming down so low, why do you say it's a higher avodah? The reason why it's considered a higher level, so he says, since the Hamshach is coming from his place, from his source and his root, from his essence, the Ein Sof, Kodesh, 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 as opposed to Kodesh, 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 Nimshach rak ha'ora min ha'atzmus. All that comes down is only a ray from Hashem's essence. V'af shein shaykh loymar ha'ora ba'atzmus, the Rebbe says, even though when you talk about essence, you can't mix it up with a ray. In general, be that as it may, exactly how we'll define it, it's still an external level. In general, the Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh would be similar to the external Hamshacha from Keser. And Baruch K'vod Hashem Koimei is referring to the revelation that comes down from and corresponds to the revelation of the inner level of Keser. Second paragraph on the page. This is also the difference between all the kindnesses and all the truth. The Chasadim is called the will of the heart, like we said before. Chesed has to do with tefillah. Tefillah is the idea of the love that he has of Hashem, a love that's True, it's infinite and it's without boundary, but it's only b'chol meidecha, it's only in our world, in the person's own boundaries that he's leaving, but it's not essentially without boundaries. Through that, we are only grasping a ray. So now the Rebbe is going to challenge us. How can you say that when we are doing the avoid of Rusa de Liba, we are only grasping a ray of Elikus? Though it says that no thought can grasp him. We say this in Tikkunei Zohar and Paschal Yo every hour of Shabbos. But it's also explained that though no thought can grasp him, but the will of the heart, the avoida that comes from the inner part of the heart, that is powerful enough to be able to grasp him. If so, we see through the level of the will of the heart, the level that's connected with davening, the level of chsadim, seemingly we are grasping the essence that one cannot grasp with thought. Still in all, the will of the heart is only a level of pulling towards Hashem, drawing towards Hashem. And what level can we draw towards? This is only applicable in a ray of the essence can we pull towards it. It says that the lower light, the lower flame, is always calling to the higher flame and doesn't rest. But what is it calling to? It's only calling to a ray, a flame, a light. It cannot touch and connect with the essence. The Gam and also Ru'usa Doliba in Yani Ratz, the idea of the will of the heart is the idea of will. So that means when you talk about a will, that means there is an entity that wants. If I'm totally bottled, it's not possible to say the word wanting. So that itself indicates that I can't connect with the essence, because as soon as there's an entity over here, entity and Hashem's essence become now like at loggerheads. It cannot totally connect. So the Rebbe says, but it's not that it's not about ego over here. Though this is a type of will, that he has no independent existence for himself. Rather, what he wants to cleave to the Eibishter's essence. So therefore, such a type of will, such a type of Rusa de Liba should have a connection with the essence. So why do you tell me that the Rusa de Liba, the avoid of Kol Achsadim, the avoid of davening, can only reach a ha'ara and not the essence? So the Rebbe says in the last line of the page, Hari al Koponim, still in all, Umetzias, and it's still an entity in existence of will. Well, the Mailam is then higher than this, is the top of page Chav Ches, higher than Mekol Achsadim, which is the will of the heart, is the level of from all the truth. Truth is only applicable to Torah, like we spoke about before. Torah connects with Hashem's essence because complete bittul. Because Torah is in such a way that my tongue will respond you're saying. And that means like a responder after a reader. Someone is reading something and I'm just repeating the words after the person. When I'm just repeating the words after the person that's reading, it's none of myself that's contributing over here. The same thing, the ultimate level of Torah study is that I'm not doing it in such a way where it's my mind, my ego, myself, my existence over here, but I completely nullify myself and I am just a speaker and saying over the words that Hashem is saying. So he says that in line 4, this idea that the person is that he's totally bottled is in all the levels of Torah study. I feel like they create even through the reading of the letters of the Torah. Like it says, even someone that doesn't know the translation of the words, he fulfills the mitzvah of study of Torah when he just reads the words of Torah Shebiksav. That's sufficient, that with that he fulfills the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Even then, he is considered completely bottled. Even though he has no understanding, he is considered responding and reading after Hashem. That's mamish, Hashem's word that contains in it the entire essence, not like Berusa Deliba, that's only a ray. That's the idea of return, instead of what we said before, that Berusa Deliba, it's a level of Ratzui, that he's drawing to Hashem, and therefore it shows on Metzias in connection with external aspects. But over here, it's Shoiv, it's the return, it's the drawing down of Hashem's essence. It's the drawing down of the essence from above to below. That's the general difference between Torah and davening. The tefillah less the davening, there's no service like the service of love. In Yana, it's about ascending and going from below to above. As opposed to Torah study. It's the idea of intellect. Intellect is not like the excitement of davening. He's going out of himself, especially the ultimate level of davening that we were talking about before, the bleak vul, he's going out of his box. Just the opposite. Torah is about intellect. It's about calmness and settle down. That's shuv. That's not rotzui. That's coming from above to below. It's a level of returning and coming down. Though the Torah study on its own could be in a low level. Though Torah is the level of pnimius and the internal level of Hashem's essence. Could be the innermost level of the lower level. Over here, there's also the advantage of Torah study that's following davening. Torah study following davening, we tap into the deeper levels. Like the order in the pasuk itself. First he says all the kindnesses which is going on davening. Then he's talking about all the truth which is going on Torah. So therefore, after reaching to the highest most level, to the in davening that's possible with all your might, that we said before, with all your might means the level of out of boundaries, beyond reason, beyond knowledge. Through Torah study that follows this, he reaches the inner level of Hashem's essence. The pnimius Abba Chochma Torah pnimius Atik, the innermost level of Abba, which is Chochma, which is Torah. That's the innermost level of Atik, which we said before. Pnimius Hakeser, that's the level of Atik. That's the level it's totally beyond. Until the level of the Torah study, top of page Chavtes, is higher, and it reaches to the innermost level of Hashem's essence. Shehu atzmusi muhusi yisbarach, it is the very essence of Hashem that the person taps into when he's learning Torah. So therefore, what do we have? This difference between davening and learning, that the learning, especially the learning that follows davening, is a level that is connected and draws down Hashem's essence, whereas with davening, we're only going to the external part of the essence, or the ray of the essence, or the external part of Keser, etc. That is one difference, and the gradation that we're going upward, and we're going from Kol Achsadim to a higher level of godly revelation of all the truth, and therefore we feel even humbler, if there is a word like that, after we have the level of all the truth of Torah learning. The next ice, we're going to talk about how it affects the world, how it impacts the world, the difference between Tefillah's impact on the world and Torah's impact on the world.